know her by now. I think there's no introduction that is needed, but her name is Mamuluko Kubai, and we are joined also by DDGs from the Department of Human Settlements. Without further ado, I'm going to request the Minister to come and outline for us the purpose of this media briefing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hlengiwe. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, South Africans at large. I would like to welcome you to this and thank you for joining us for this media briefing. It's one of those milestones that as Human Settlements portfolio that we're looking forward to. I am joined by, as Hlengiwe said, the leadership of the department that is going to help me as we deal with the issues that are here. Joining me is the Director General of the department, the DDGs of the department, for this media briefing. After our visit to all 9 provinces wherein we were able to engage with leaders in the provinces and visited projects and listened to beneficiaries, we reflected on our findings and analyzed the housing delivery system value chain as a whole. We've heard the cries of potential beneficiaries who are still waiting for their houses, the cries of children whose circumstances have dedicated that they should be the heads of their families, and the cries of the elderly who have nowhere else to turn but to rely on their government. We also took time to engage and consult various stakeholders within the human settlements sector. Armed with the analysis and the first-hand experience of many of the challenges society is facing, we decided to prioritize various areas that I will be outlining today. And I must indicate that this is work that is continuing. This is work that we have been laid in terms of the foundation over years, and that's why we are able to reach some of these milestones today. I must hasten to say that it's not resolving all the challenges, it's not answering all the questions, but we are making progress towards achieving our objectives. Part of what we have prioritized for the following financial year, which starts from the 1st of April, is unblocking of blocked projects, elimination of asbestos roof across the country in terms of the provinces, where there will be prioritization of this in dealing, because we understand the impact in terms of the health implications, increase the pace of provision of title deeds to rightful property owners, prioritizing especially the pre-1994 stock, but ensuring that we don't have a backlog going forward. Eliminating mud houses, especially in rural areas, as we prioritize especially the elderly and child-headed households. Digitization of the beneficiary list to make it more reliable, transparent, easily accessible, and avoid fraud and corruption. I am pleased that working together with my through MINMEC, which is our intergovernmental forum, has endorsed these priorities that I'm outlining today. In addition to the above-mentioned priorities, we also came to the conclusion that to fast-track service delivery across the country and to respond to the challenges observed in the sector during the ministerial visits, we need to develop a structure in the form of Human Settlements War Room. Amongst other things, the War Room will do the following: coordinate efforts, monitor and fast-track the implementation of diverse projects across provinces, the provision of detailed analysis and support in the implementation of human settlement development grants, provide project tracking tools on all projects to monitor and to report to the War Room, identify strategic partners that could assist to unblock challenges, create an enabling environment for corporate governance in line with Intergovernmental Relations Act. We are pleased that Mr. Dan Kobachev Matsitisho, the former DG of the Department of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, has already accepted our invitation to lead the War Room and will be joining us and will also look at other specialists with the skills that we are looking for to be able to assist us in this process. The changes I'm about to present, ladies and gentlemen, were formulated within the context of continuous improvement in the delivery of the department's mandate and come into effect from the 1st of April 2022. I will begin with the changes we have effected on the grant funding. On HSDG, which is Human Settlement Development Grant, having realized that there are many incomplete and complete projects that have not been occupied because of lack of bulk infrastructure, we decided to intervene towards resolving this problem. In this regard, the structure of the HSDG has been reconfigured to allow for delivery of bulk infrastructure, and the allocation for bulk has increased from 3% to 5%, but backed by a good plan. If the province wants to increase to 30%, we require them to provide us with plans in place that would be approved by the Department of Human Settlements and National Treasury, and that they will be able to spend 30% of that HSDG grant to be able to resolve the bulk infrastructure in their provinces. This will be specifically for non-metro municipalities in terms of the implementation. In the financial year 2022 and 2023, we will start implementing front-loading in 2 provinces, which is Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape under the Infrastructure Fund, which will allow us to significantly increase the scale of housing delivery in a short space of time. This means that these provinces can start implementing their plans, utilizing the budget of the next 2 financial years as announced by the Minister of Finance during his budget speech. On social housing, since the last adjustment of the qualification criteria in 2018, tenants are struggling to pay their rentals due to inflation and substantial increases in utility costs. We have revised the bands of household earning from revised the bands for household earning, which means from the 1st of April, the band will be 1,850 to 22,000 gross monthly income to qualifying, as opposed to what we had previously as a qualifying criteria income, which was at 1,500 to 15,000. This will align with the broader definition of the affordable housing program, such as FLISP. On FLISP, FLISP is a housing subsidy for the first-time home buyers to assist with purchasing a home. You can understand that we've been battling with this FLIPS language, and that's why we've decided, and somebody was saying to us, are you changing the policy or just the name? We've decided to call it Help Me Buy a House from the 1st of April, so that everybody can understand and easy to follow on what we are trying to do. For buyers to qualify, they have to fall within a certain income bracket that is considered as the gap market, or what we call the missing middle. So far, the program has not achieved intended policy objectives for a number of reasons. With effect from the 1st of April this financial year, the program will also extend to non-facilities, and accordingly, Help Me Buy a House, which previously known as FLISP, may be used in combination with one of the following products and situation. Firstly, housing loans granted or guaranteed by pension and provident funds, unsecured home loans from any registered lender, housing loans granted or guaranteed by cooperatives or community-based saving schemes. The program can be used in combination with individual own resources or savings as well. Housing loans supported by employer-based schemes such as government employee housing scheme or private sector employer assistant housing schemes. Housing loans supported by permission to occupy issued by government or recognized traditional authority. And also the quantum range for this program increases by between 7.2% and 10%. The change, we believe, will go a long way in enhancing affordability of home loans, as households will be able to put in higher deposits for their home loans or cover other housing acquisitions or building costs permissible in the policy. This will enable all qualifying South Africans to access this subsidy in both rural and urban areas of our country. We look forward to seeing a large increase in uptake in rural provinces and delivering on People's Section 26 right. Our key partner in delivering these programs are lenders, in particular our commercial banks, and of course other lending institutions offering housing loans. I am comfortable and have been working in terms of our teams. They have also reported that BASA and NHFC have negotiated a memorandum of agreement to partner on the delivery of flips, or Help Me Buy a House, which I hope will be signed soon. I'm happy before that today we are confirming that the revised policy has been approved as well by all our provinces in terms through our collaboration and working together through MINMEC. So therefore, what does this mean? This means that we are going to receive confirmation that banks and other lenders are going to work with us in terms of partnership, and the lead institution in this will be the NHFC, or has been the NHFC, and will continue to improve into that. And I'll come into details how we are going to work and ensure that NHFC is fit to be able to achieve what we have outlined. And also, what we are comfortable and happy about is the signing of the Memorandum of Agreement between NHFC and DPSA that will ensure that government employees as well are assisted in accessing this work, this grant or support that we have in terms of their implementation as I outlined earlier on. Moving on to subsidy quantum, this is the amount we are spending. For those who do not know, when we talk about subsidy quantum, this is how much we are allocating for those who are in construction to know that this is what building a house or a social house or even providing a subsidy it will cost. You may be aware that the current subsidy quantum has not been changed since 2018. In the period between then and now, the quantum has been affected by inflation, which was starting to have an effect in the quality of housing units where we were providing in terms of our beneficiaries. So as agreed, because we would want to ensure the quality is not compromised, but also the contractors don't leave side because it's no longer profitable for them to continue to building for us as a sector. As agreed together with our MECs in MINMEC, we have introduced changes that will come into effect in the financial year 2022-2023, which means that from the 1st of April 2022, our housing programs will cost as follows. For a BNG, which people call RDP services and top structure, it's moving to 196,887,000. Houses for persons with disabilities, you'd understand that this quantum has to be higher because the specifications have to be suitable for a person with disabilities. This goes to 209,071,000. Military veterans houses, it's all around 240,000. And then for the FLISP market, it's around 147,000. Social housing moves to 187,000. We believe that with these amendments, we will be able to accelerate housing delivery and avoid projects being abandoned. We call on our implementing agents, including contractors and developers, to deliver quality services, quality houses on time and within budget. On disaster areas, a number of areas around the country or communities have been affected by natural disasters, such as floods, thunderstorms, and fires. In most cases, those who are affected require alternative shelter immediately, and others want to repair the damages to their houses as soon as possible. In analyzing our response time and the adequacy of the responses to affected areas, we found that our system, which included inflexible communication, which then leads to shortage of funds to cover the disaster victims in totality, and long response time, which worsens the status of the victims. You'd understand that when a disaster happens, the people becomes homeless at that time. And that's why our response time is critical as human settlements. We introduced a number of new directives applicable to provincial departments so that we change the manner of intervention in disaster areas. These directives include 24-hour turnaround period for the assessment of the disaster and fast-tracking of repairs through a voucher system. I must hasten to say that we do not wait for the area to be declared a disaster by COGTA, because when a disaster happens, it's a flood, roofs are gone, people are on the streets. So our intervention allows for us to go immediately and look at the areas and make the intervention, because sometimes you find the misunderstanding that you need to wait for COGTA to declare a disaster in that area. For human settlements allocations, we do not need that. With regards to financing, provinces and metros are now allowed to utilize available funds from HSDG, USDG, which is HSDG is Human Settlement Development Grant, USDG, Urban Settlement Development Grant, and ISUP, its Informal Settlement Upgrading Program, to intervene in dealing with the damages. Moving to the entities of the portfolio. When I arrived in the portfolio, I made an undertaking that I will immediately put effort in the stabilization of our entities under the human settlements portfolio. I am pleased to report that we have already, as we previously announced, appointed 5 boards, which is HDA, SHRA, Social Housing Regulatory Authority, CSOS, PPRA, NHBRC, as previously announced. Today, I am happy to announce that Cabinet this week approved our board, which is NHFC, which we will be announcing in our AGM on Tuesday. And the following people becomes what we will, on behalf of the shareholder, present at the AGM as board members. Mr. Luthando Vuthula as the chairperson of NHFC. NHFC is National Housing Finance Corporation. This is the entity that we are looking for it to become. We are in a transition to becoming a human settlement bank. Mr. Vuthula has experience in housing development and financing, has worked in terms of this sector, but also both in public and private sector. And we are comfortable and happy and confident that he's going to steer the ship towards the right direction and improving on what has been laid as a foundation by previous boards and the teams that has worked there. Mr. Tembikosi Bonakele as a board member, Ms. Pilisiwe Mtetwa as a board member, Mr. Velile Dube as a board member, Ms. Aisha Sidat as a board member, Ms. Tepiso Kobile as a board member, Mr. Paul Higa as a board member, Mr. Tulani Mabaso as a board member, Mr. Kadi Palesa, Ms. Kadi Palesa as a board member, Ms. Tembisile Chiliza as a board member, Ms. Sitati Bolimpopo as a board member. I'm well aware that the appointment of boards does not automatically bring stability to the entities. However, it is an important step to the right direction. I take this opportunity to thank the outgoing board for all their work, contribution, dedication, and sacrifice that they've made over the years in ensuring that we build the foundations that we have at NHFC, and wish them well in their future endeavors. I have over time, as well as we talk about the issues of the entities, understood that we have to ensure that there's corporate governance and compliance with good governance protocols. And that's why the appointment of the boards are a very critical step towards ensuring that we have effectively functioning of entities, but accountability that can be done, and the separation between what the accounting authorities and the executive authority is able to take as a responsibility and account to the nation. One of the areas that remains a sore point for me is the vacancies that exist within these entities in terms of executive level and other technical skills that are required. And this is one of the areas that I've requested the boards to focus on and ensure that they fast track the appointment of those executives and appoint especially senior leaders in this. And I'm looking forward to seeing the board making sure that they reach these objectives as soon as possible, as in yesterday, because without leadership that is able to take responsibility, that is able to account, we will not be able to achieve the objectives that we want. One of the others that I've asked is to ensure that the entities, in terms of their boards, ensure that we have the structures, organizational structures, that are suitable to achieving the objectives, are fit for purpose, and with the right technical skills that will assist us to be able to reach our objectives, but maximum of our potential as a sector. Due to long periods of poor leadership and instability in some of these entities, unfortunately, a disruptive culture has germinated within some of these entities. I'm speaking of a culture of rumor-mongering, a culture of fictitious grievances, a culture of media leaks, and substantiated and frivolous whistleblowing that has taken the root cause of this portfolio. I'm a firm believer that we must deal decisively with wrongdoing and corruption. However, channels for exposing such should not be abused for agendas that have nothing to do with fighting wrongdoing and corruption. Since arriving in this portfolio, I have been bombarded with allegations and counter-allegations of corruption, which are then leaked to the media. What is common about these allegations is that no evidence in most of these things is provided to substantiate and guarantee or even afford me, as the executive authority, an opportunity to respond to or institute processes. And yet I have to spend more hours going through media inquiries, going through these allegations, going through these documents without supporting evidence. In one incident, just to share, I received same questions that I had to respond to from 7 journalists. You can imagine the amount of time that you have to verify from 7 journalists at a go in one day these questions, and then at the end you realize they are all the same. And all this, I'm saying, not negating the importance of the media role in assisting us to protect our democracy, to fight corruption, because over years we've seen how media has been able to assist us in fighting corruption and blowing the whistle in where wrongdoings have been done. I want to appeal to my media colleagues to, at least when sources give you information, try and get just basic evidence of it so that we are able to help each other as partners in fighting corruption to be able to have fruitful and productive working environment. The stabilization effort has also been made difficult by the existence of well-entrenched patronage and corruption networks that are putting up a huge fight against the stabilization effort. This comes across as you try and put systems in place. Sometimes you see it with the questions that you receive, that this is a fight back against what we are trying to do as putting systems, because where there are no systems, it allows for wrongdoing to happen. And I want to say, my commitment in fighting corruption, my commitment in protecting whistleblowers, my commitment in ensuring that there's value for money to all South Africans in the human settlement can be questioned, and I remain firm on it. But I need all of you to help me in ensuring that we are not distracted from the real work, in ensuring that service delivery happen to the people of South Africa. I wish for the new board in terms of the work, I wish for the new board to be given space to focus on the task of stabilizing the entities of which they are responsible, and not to be occupied with conducting investigations for which they are hardly capable of conducting. I have therefore decided that I will be approaching Special Investigation Unit to conduct an investigation in all our entities where there are claims of wrongdoing and corruption. We'll provide them with some of the documents that we have in the entirety of the portfolio so that they are able to sift whether some of these issues, because they will have capability and the know-how of doing this without us interfering with the work, but not being distracted at the task at hand. I have said elsewhere that wrongdoing and corruption will be dealt with without fear or favor. And I encourage this evidence. Provide this evidence to us through the SIU. As I said, I will be engaging, I have started engaging Advocate Mutiba to do a preliminary assessment whether some of these things warrant. As you know, the process with SIU, they will do an assessment, put together a report, and submit to the president for a proclamation. So you don't start with a proclamation. You start with preliminary assessment, because as I'm saying, some of the documents that we receive, some of this do not have any supporting evidence, and we have no capacity to determine whether this is correct, this is right, this is information that is valid or not, and they will be able to assist us in that regard. So that's why I'm encouraging those South Africans that have the information, those employees that say they have information, provide us with that information through SIU so that we can be able to get this done, over and done with, and we protect the of the state, and we protect our work, but allow us to be able to focus in delivering human settlements priorities. In conclusion, we are a government that cares and committed to the dignity of the people through the provision of sustainable human settlements. We are doing all of this knowing very well that we will still have so much work to do for security and comfort to be realized by all. Our commitment to those that have been waiting for their houses is that we shall deliver on our houses. Please be patient with us as we fix the problems where you have identified them, as we deal with the feedback that you have given us. Each day we have objectives, we have a target, we have a team that is dedicated in human settlements to ensuring that work is done, that targets are met, that we respond to what you have called us to do in serving you as a nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister, for that outline of what brings us here today. Welcome, DG. We are also joined here by our DG, Mr. Nshangana. So I'm going to allow this time for questions. I know that our media colleagues are quite eager to ask their questions. I'm going to open this session. If there's anyone at this point who may have a question for the Minister, the DG is also here. You are welcome to pose it. Okay, I have Bilani at the back. You can go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. My name is Bilani Pahadi. I'm from Newsroom Africa. Just a few questions that I was hoping you could assist with. There are houses that are illegally occupied. Not far from here, there's Oliver Hot Bosch, where thousands of houses you've built or your department has built are illegally occupied, and it's been almost 5 years now. In areas like that where rightful beneficiaries are yet to move into their homes, long-waited homes, some of them having those papers all the way from 1996 and 1998. Is this something that your department will do to try and rectify that along with law enforcement? Secondly, there's the issue and the phenomenon of the selling of RDP houses, and I'm sure it remains a concern. Just a comment on that. And in your statement, you were mentioning that the media colleagues, our colleagues, some of them are allegedly being used in the fight back against allegations upon allegations. There's SANEF among other bodies. Don't you think it's also an important thing to have SANEF to intervene if you feel that you have seen questions from several journalists. I'm sure it should be a concern, and therefore you might want to not have just allegations as well and put them on camera. You will want to act on it. And lastly, you remain with an ambitious target, looking at the whole world, where you still provide free housing for the destitute. With the tightening budgets across the spectrum, do you think you'll be able to execute your mandate as we come out economically from the impact of COVID-19 and what is happening in Russia and Ukraine?
Thank you so much, Pilani. Is there anyone else? I'll take another one. Junior from City Press.
Good morning, Minister. My name is Junior Commando from News 24. I just have one.
Apologies, Junior, for that. News 24. Apologies for that. Yes,
I'm at News 24 now. The Minister spoke about journalists sending the same type of questions to her office. Would it not then be because the staff, especially at HDA, have tried to communicate with the Minister and with the HDA board, and they feel like they have not succeeded in getting their message across to the Minister? Because some of these complaints were actually sent to the Minister and to the board in January, and there was no communication back to the employees that work at the HDA. And whilst we're still at the HDA, there are two executives that are being accused of serious misconduct, and the board is not acting. The board said that there has been an investigation law firm appointed to investigate these two officials, but the same officials are the ones that are picking the law firm. So those are some of the complaints that the employees themselves are raising with the Minister. Even this week, the media has been alerted that the same executives have gone to finance and asked for the documents for the 5 contracts that are in question. And those 5 contracts are worth almost $250 million. So would then the Minister consider intervening, because the board seems like it has failed in this situation? They are allowing these same executives to investigate themselves, basically.
Thank you, Junior. If there's another one, I'll take it, and then we can allow Minister to respond to those questions. No one else? Okay. All right. Ma'am, I think we can respond. The DG. Okay, DG, please, if you can come and respond to some of the questions.
Thank you very much, Pilani, for the question. It's an important question. I think there's about 4 questions that you've raised. The first one is about Oliven, the illegal invasions in Oliven. We have been dealing with the housing challenges in Oliven for some time now. You will recall that one of the mega projects that we launched in 2005 up to 2008 was in Oliven. There is a massive demand for housing in Oliven, and the challenge that we have is the availability of land. Invasions, in fact, the area of the unauthorized, the language that the courts are asking us to use lately, is not to use the word illegal invasions, it's unauthorized occupations. But that area is clearly regulated by the illegal, what we call the PI Act, the Prevention of the Illegal Eviction Act, which simply means in our day language that if people have invaded the land or they have invaded houses, it doesn't mean that the state must evict them illegally. That's a simple explanation of the PI Act. I guess we have challenges there together with the municipality of Tshwane, because Tshwane has been managing this part for some time now, and I think they went to court to evict some people, but we're dealing with evictions after evictions. I guess part of the problem is what Minister has touched on earlier in her presentation about making sure that we manage the process of the allocation of houses to beneficiaries. I think there's a mistake that we made in the sector as early as 2008 of delinking action from the allocation of houses. We used to approve the beneficiaries first before we approve the allocation of houses. But we delinked that process in 2008, and I think we're going back there to fix that problem. Minister has talked in a number of platforms about digitization of the beneficiary list, because if you go to various provinces and to various municipalities, you will notice that we don't have an automated beneficiary management list, which is where the problem starts, because in some cases people are jumping the queue, they evict, they get into these houses because they want to jump the queue. Some of them, they get into these houses because they have no confidence in the management of the beneficiary list. And this is one of the problem areas that the minister has prioritized. The Oliven challenge is not just about the invaded houses, it's also about the invaded land. There's land that has been invaded, there's informal settlements in that area. So the housing challenges in Oliven is not just about invasions, it's also about the availability of land. And together with the municipality of Tshwane, we're trying to manage that challenge of Oliven. The second question was about the selling of the RDP houses. Let's make it very clear that in the Act is very specific about this. It doesn't say that beneficiaries are not allowed to sell the houses, those who have received the houses. I'm assuming that you are referring to people who have received houses and who have decided to sell the houses. You are allowed to sell the house, but government has the first right of refusal. In other words, you have to sell that house to government first if you want to move, for whatever reasons. If you want to move out of Pretoria, or you want to move out of Cape Town, where you have been given a house and you're going somewhere, you can sell that house to the state, to the provincial department, and the provincial department or the municipality that is accredited will have the first right of refusal. But if you're talking about selling of RDP houses in general, that's an illegal act, and I think it needs to be dealt with as such, and we need to report it. I think you have a responsibility there as media people to report it to the law enforcement agencies, and to report it to the department, to the minister and the department, so that we can act on it if you do have evidence. And then we will ask all the law enforcement agencies to assist us to deal with that matter, including the intelligence, the crime intelligence with the SAPS. There was a question about the matter. Minister will take care of all the questions around the board, because she has acted on those issues, and she will answer those questions explicitly. And again, in all of that, we should remember that due process is important in whatever we do. We don't want to run ahead of ourselves and not do proper investigations. But I'll leave those questions to Minister, because Minister has interacted with the board and he has given board members clear instructions on what they need to do. Why are we still providing free housing? Well, it is a constitutional obligation for the state to provide free housing. We're not doing it because we want to do it. Even the ruling party is very clear on how we provide this free housing. We provide it to the indigent, and it's defined clearly that we provide it to the indigent, to children-headed households, people living with disabilities, and elderly people. So we're not providing free house to everyone. We're providing free housing to those who are in need. And again, you're correct. Most countries do not provide free housing. South Africa put it in the Constitution. I think Section 26 of the Constitution is very clear about this item. that we provide housing, to adequate housing to those who are in need. But there is a limitation clause there. If you read that chapter, that clause in the Constitution, there is a limitation there that says that this is a progressive realization. It's not an open right that you give it to everyone. So you have to realize it based on your plans, based on your budget, based on your resources. So you have to plan for it. For it's a progressive realization of that right. It's not a right that has no limitations. So we will continue to provide free housing to the destitute, to elderly people, based on our budget. But I'm sure you would have noticed by now that the state has changed tact in terms of how we realize that right. We provide basic services in informal settlements. Minister has talked about the informal settlements upgrading grant. We also provide service sites to households, because the majority of South Africans, they know how to build houses for themselves. The only part that they may be struggling with is how to provide bulk infrastructure, bulk sewer, which is why in Minister's earlier comment, she touched on how we assist municipalities to provide bulk infrastructure. We made some changes in the Human Settlements Development Grant, HSDG, so that we allow those municipalities that do not receive USDG, which is the Urban Settlements Development Grant, to use a portion of that budget, of that grant, for bulk infrastructure, because we don't want to build houses without services. We made it very clear that where we build houses, we want to make sure that there are services first. You can't start with top structures and worry later about bulk infrastructure, which is why Minister has made those changes in the HSDG. I think I've covered most of the questions that I think the questions that Minister will attend to are the questions that were raised by Junior around HDA. Minister will be able to deal with the specifics there. If we have not covered your question adequately, Pulani, please feel free to follow up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG. Let me start with what Pilani has raised around possibly approaching SANEF. At this point, I had not thought that is important. That's why I just made a public plea. As I said, we are intervening in getting fuller of this, but cautioning that let's be cautious as we work. In my role as minister in previous portfolios, I've had interaction with SANEF, and where necessary, we'll definitely do so that they can assist us in that. And as I emphasized, Pilani, I do believe that the media has a significant role to play to assist us. Because some of this information, yes, will not come to me directly, will go to you. And that's what I'm saying, as it comes to the media, at least ask for certain information so that when it comes to me, you are able to assist me and I can act so that it doesn't become long. Junior, on the issues around HDA specifically, or the issue that we have, let me just say, arriving in the portfolio since last year, not only in HDA, all the portfolio and the entities, you'd find one allegation asked after the other. And my issue is, if it's an allegation and then you do preliminary assessment, you ask questions, and you find that there are answers on what is being, and they satisfy you, there isn't a need for you to continue, as I'm saying. There would have been in all the other areas. Where it's an issue where you are saying, give me evidence, give me a report, and you get report that you can investigate, then you start. And as DG said, you'll have to do due process. So it's not only at HDA. Let me just zoom into HDA. And perhaps the issue of, for example, I received a whistleblower letter in January. Within 2 days I received that, I wrote back formally, outlining what the Act puts as an obligation to me, and made a commitment that the board will have to deal with it. I called the board chair. I wrote to the board chair. I know for a fact that the chair of the subcommittee that deals with human resources in HDA met with a particular individual, placed options to say, this is what, if you think that we should be able to protect, because the Act says this is how we should protect. The individual said, no, no, no. Because if, for example, you say to me, I can't work in this environment because it's not conducive. As an employer, I have an obligation to make an alternative arrangement. I make that alternative arrangement. You come and reject it as a whistleblower. So those are some of the difficulties that we have. Then the other one that came was a WhatsApp message. Derogatory, inappropriate. Actually, if I was another person, I would have charged that individual. But I decided to say, because you are building relationships, you are trying to build confidence from staff to say, I will listen to you. And that's what we want to do. And my appeal consistently is that let not the open door policy be abused. So I've met with HDA executives before the board appointed during the time of the administrator. I appealed to them to focus on the task at hand and allow us space. You'd note that we had investigations that related to Dalana with the SIU. We've acted. Immediately SIU came with the report, we went and acted. And I asked for a report. Now, currently, you're talking about 2 executives. The allegations are against 4 executives. So HDA has 9 executives. In the 9 executives, 3 are acting. The CEO is acting. The CFO is acting. 3 regional heads, actually, are acting. Head of legal is acting. So I'm just trying to point a picture of the entity that we are dealing with. Now, that's why I said to the board, prioritize the appointment of the CEO and the CFO. They have submitted to me recommendations. So interviews have been done, have been concluded. They've made recommendations that I received last week, and we are processing. As soon as possible, we'll be able to get the approval of those. Now, whether the board has failed, I don't think so. We are being unfair to the board, Junior. This board was appointed on the 1st of November. They went through inductions. They went through taking over the entity, understanding what are the issues. And they prioritize. I'm saying they appointed, and we now have a recommendation of the CEO and the CFO. They've had to deal with annual reports, Auditor General's reports in terms of what has been raised, and prepare for this financial year in terms of annual performance plans in HDA. So the boards that we appoint are not full-time executive or full executive, neither is even the chairperson. In the short time that they've been there, I'm highly impressed by the work that they've done. I think that, because I asked them to say, I know, but it give more attention to they've done so. We are sitting with a point now have an annual performance plan in place. And we're within the short space. Does that result in done in the allegations? When, because first allegations as well start, as I said, it's around several people. Others, it's allegations that they've been appointed inappropriately without qualifications. Others is allegations, as you are saying. Others is allegations that are following them somewhere. So it's quite. Others, it's issues of collusions. As I'm saying, look at the veracity of what is being recommended. The board. That's why, as the minister today, officially, I have decided to approach the help us. Because if it's an allegation to say when people are doing this, there's coalition, parties and the contractors and the I know the department entity board has capacity to do that. It needs that are experienced in this to check whether indeed they will go to the bank accounts of the people, check the tracing companies. It needs people who have the capacity to do that. Now, and my appeal to the staff is to give us space. You see, it becomes a bit of a challenge if you report something. You are told we are going to put a process. You are told to investigate. But then you want to dictate that it must be finished within 2 weeks. It can't be right. There is no way, because one of the things that government loses court cases is because we are accused of process. We rush into decisions. We rush into acting. And when we want to do the due process that we are expected, then we are accused of derailing. It's something that sometimes you find yourself trying to balance, and it's not easy. But my appeal to all the staff in all entities, because it's not only HDA, we are focused on HDA because you've raised it. All the entities where they've raised issues, they've raised complaints, us to investigate. I assure them, I will hold the board accountable. But as the minister, I can't go and deal. For example, I got somebody asking me if I know somebody who's not even another executive who's not at the level that I get involved, that has been suspended. And I asked, where do I get in here? Unless if you are saying to me, because if it's the executive that is senior CEO or somebody has suspended this person, then if it's undue process, the person must go to the board. Only come to me after the board has interviewed media questions about something like that. And then I ask, but shouldn't this question be to the board? Why am I being asked as the minister to answer this? And that's the context I'm trying to raise these things as a minister. With the issues around the contracts and all that, I wouldn't know who does what, because those are operational matters. But the board, when I interacted with the board, they've said to me, Minister, we've looked at everything. We've received most of these allegations at HDA. We've set up a meeting specifically to zoom into these issues. But I said to them, because now there seem to be even, because that seemed to start suggesting that the employees, because they are not happy with the pace, they're starting not to be comfortable. You can imagine with SIU, they are going to complain again. Because there is no way even SIU can give them the answers within a month. There is no way. Look at all the traces of the investigations. They don't happen within a month because it's due process. So the board has taken a decision to say, in light of some of these issues, and I think the issue around appointment of this issue, in terms of work that has been done, in terms of the issues around, what is it called? The board being able to do its work. The board has also even put, as I said, put in place the work. They've reviewed how they do their ethics systems. And remember, the board as well, when they arrive into the portfolio, they have to operate within the policies that exist. Because if they do operate outside, then they are also as well violating corporate governance. What we have agreed with Dr. Rachidanga was that can they assess if the policies and what is in place currently is sufficient. Where there's a need of enhancement, they need to do that. So that going forward, you don't have a situation whereby staff members feel that the mechanisms in place are not sufficient. And that work hasn't been done. I'm informed that they're meeting on the 4th of April as Social and Ethics Committee to look at the work around that, and they will be able to deal with that. So those are some of the things that we are dealing with. Now, that's what is important for us to be able to. I wouldn't want to hear saying that the board must suspend CEO and CFO or anyone being alleged. I would be breaching corporate governance. But actually, it will be unfair to the individuals because you must be on the basis of evidence before you make that determination. You don't just wake up because there's an allegation, you suspend someone. You'll go to court, you lose. And today, courts are finding us personally liable. So you must be able to say, is there evidence of this? If there is, then you can take action. And I think to do its work. I have full confidence in the board that we've appointed me to in the put.
Thanks for that, Minister. I hope that colleagues were clarified, the specific colleagues who asked the questions. I'm going to ask, do we have questions there, Ignatius? Okay, we don't have questions on the WhatsApp line, but we do have a question right here in front. You can go ahead, ma'am.
Molly Momoto from SABC. Minister, the other issue is that of the 64 million rand project, the Mamelodi project, which was aimed which was meant to alleviate the challenges of COVID in 2020 for the hostel dwellers. The situation is still the same. The houses are still not fully occupied, and some are even worn out because apparently they were built on a wetland. Has this been brought to your attention? Is there anything that is being done to address the situation? Have people been held accountable because seemingly corruption played a major role in the whole project?
Okay. Would that be it? I'm going to allow the DG to respond to that, and then I think we will come to a close after that. Okay, I'm going to allow DG to answer that.
Thank you very much for the question, Malemo. Again, it's an important question. The Minister addressed it partially when we talked about the Talan hostels. Let me first explain the structure of that contract for delivery of these temporary residential areas, as we call them, or temporary residential units. What happened here is that Tshwane Metro entered into an agreement with the Housing Development Agency for the Housing Development Agency to be an implementing agent. So HDA was an implementing agent. HDA appointed the service provider after they entered into an agreement with the city of Tshwane to deliver on that on those TRUs. And the TRUs were delivered during the pandemic, during the lockdown. And the intention was to try and make sure that we deal with overcrowding in the hostels. Now, one of the things that we have perfected in the sector is to make sure that for every project that we implement, we get into a social compacting arrangement with the beneficiaries so that by the time we deliver the product, it becomes a product that the beneficiaries themselves wanted. I think in this case, there are quite a number of things that went wrong. One of them, one would argue that maybe there was not enough or adequate consultation with the beneficiaries. And you may ask a question, how adequate is adequate consultation? And we can have a debate the whole day about it, because some of the officials in Tshwane and at HDA have minutes of some of the meetings that took place before those units were delivered. But we don't want to sit here and be defensive about it. I think there is a problem and it needs to be resolved, because those units, some of them were rejected by the beneficiaries themselves. And this is a matter that Tshwane and HDA are busy with. There is a service provider who was appointed, but I'm told that the service provider vacated the site, and that service provider is no longer there. We have been discussing this matter with the group executive head of Tshwane, Ms. Nonto Memela, who's responsible for human settlements, together with Silo Chipo. We do have details about what needs to be done at this stage and the engagements that have to happen with the communities. It's not only there, and these are issues that we were grappling with during COVID. We experienced a similar challenge in Harrismith, in Maluti Apofong. We had a similar challenge in Zanin. We've dealt with it. In some cases, consequence management has been executed by HDA. Earlier, there was a specific question about HDA. I think it's important to state here that some of the officials who were involved in irregular activities at HDA were suspended, and others resigned, and others were, the investigation is still going on. So it would not be true to say that nothing is being done. There's a lot of work that has been done by this current board and by this minister to make sure that consequence management is executed. Here, I think the bigger issue is not so much about the contract itself. It's not so much about corruption on the Mamelodi Hostel TRA. I think the main issue is about the nature of the contract itself. And I think part of the problem in that contract as well was not following the norms and standards for the TRAs. We do have norms and standards for the provision of TRAs. The National Department will be updating those norms and standards, but the current norms and standards were passed in 2009-2010 financial year. In some cases, the norms and standards were not adhered to, and we wrote to HDA and to the Metro to adhere with the norms and standards, which was the problem as well in Talana, in Limpopo. Because in some of these areas, just to give you an example, because we had a similar problem in the Free State. If you know Harrismith, it's very cold in winter and it's very hot in summer. And we never wanted to provide zinc or zinc material. There's regulated material which has a good effect. Thermal means the structure adapts according to the weather. When it's hot outside, that structure is cool inside. And when it's cold outside, that structure retains the heat. Those structures, the temporary residential unit structures, are clearly regulated by the National Department. And we wanted HDA, together with the metropolitan municipalities and provinces, who are our implementing partners, to adhere to those structures and not deliver structures that are not good for human habitation. So we wrote to them and we asked them to rectify. And I suspect that's what Tshwane and HDA is busy with. We can provide to you further details as to what is it that Tshwane and HDA are planning to do in that area. There will be further discussion. I will avail herself to deal with some of the issues, including the issues around the board. But I want to invite you to look at the quality of the board members that the minister has appointed in all the entities, not just the NHFC. If you look at the one that we have announced today, those are people who have been in the business of development finance for a very long time and are highly experienced. The same applies to HDA. You look at the chairperson of HDA, Dr. Raj Tanga, who's in the business of built environment for a very long time. Quality in our boards, and we trust that they will assist us to turn those institutions around. There are some green shoots, if I may say, at HDA. I think there are quite a number of good things that they are busy with, but once the position of the CFO and the I have that is contract.
DG, for that. Colleagues, if there's no other questions, we are going briefing to a close. Because 5 past 10, we're supposed to. So without wasting any more time, thank you so much for everybody who come through today, and thank you to DG. Thank you so much, colleagues. Have a safe trip home.
You know, one of the problems. You know, one of